Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Calling Within. Today, we're chatting to my wonderful friend, Claire. Thank you very much, Claire, for agreeing to come on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm very excited.
Me too. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you. So today we have a lot of juicy and amazing topics to dive into. We're going to chat a little bit about how you got into yoga, how you became a wonderful, amazing yoga teacher. Also, how can yoga help us to be more present? And how can yoga help us with our mental health, with our emotional regulation? And how do we make connections through yoga in a yoga studio? And how do we find like-minded people? And also, this is quite a few topics today. We're going to chat about transitions in life and how we can go through them. So yeah, I'm very, very excited. Suggest we dive into it.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah. So I guess then let's start with the yoga piece. And how did you get into yoga?
So I kind of accidentally got into yoga many years ago. I started doing it when I was an undergraduate. So probably when I was 20, maybe 19 even. I was a competitive swimmer in college. And I started going with a friend as a way to heal a shoulder injury. And I started with Bikram yoga, which was a pretty intense way to start. And for those who don't know what Bikram is, it's a style of yoga that you do in a heated room. So like 30 degrees Celsius and above. And it's a set sequence of postures. So it's the same thing every time and it lasts about 90 minutes. So it can be pretty grueling, but it helped and you feel really, really good afterwards. And then I kept going. I kind of got hooked and started doing more like different styles of classes. And then one summer I did a teacher training. I had the opportunity to do teacher training at a studio at my hometown in Florida. And I kind of did it as like something to learn more about the practice and wound up really loving it. And that's kind of the beginning of my yoga journey. And after that, it became part of who I am and something I did not every day, but regularly. And yeah, that was a really long-winded answer.
That's okay. Wow. Amazing. I love hearing people's stories and backgrounds and how they got into yoga because I feel like our journeys are so unique. But it's just so wonderful how we end up in those amazing places, loving yoga, making yoga part of our everyday life, part of our identity, and yeah, really finding ourselves through this practice. I wanted to ask you because you've mentioned you kind of started seeing yoga as more than just a physical practice at some point in your life. How did this transition occur? Because I know, and for me especially, that's how a lot of people start. They just do physical practice of asanas, but yoga is actually so much more than that.
Oh, yes, so much more, yeah. And that's something I think you talked about on your first podcast, was that we say yoga asana. Asanas are actually the postures, and there's this whole thing within the yoga community of I do yoga, and it kind of just makes yoga all about the physical practice, but it's so much more than that. And I also like to think that it can be as much for one person as they want it to be. Like there's something available in everybody. But when I first started doing it, I went to it as something to like supplement my swim training. And having swam competitively for many years, it kind of ingrained in me that I had to exert like maximum physical effort every time I trained. And I was training 6 days a week, if not 7, and for 2 hours, maybe 3 a day, and which was not even as tense as like some other swimmers would do. So when I got to yoga, it was very, very hard for me to learn to like not push my body to those limits and to like respect my body, I guess, and to kind of tune into it and understand that you have to trust the process, especially when you're getting more flexible, like you're not going to see it right away. And so there was definitely this struggle at first and when I first started teacher training, I couldn't touch my toes, and the instructor would come and she would just be like, what are you doing? And I had this curve in my back and I'd be trying to force it, and she just was always like, Claire, trust the process, trust the process. And so over time, it kind of became this way to like realize, okay, my body might feel differently one day versus the other, and I can do this and that, and find like new ways of moving that aren't about punishing my body, if that makes sense.
Wow. Yeah, what you said there is just so powerful, because I feel like a lot of people have the opposite problem. They are trying to learn how to push themselves, but you were trying to unlearn how to push yourself and trust the process, and not really being obsessed with the progress, but just trusting the process and just seeing how it unfolds.
Yeah, and I remember having a friend here she had just graduated from college, and she ran cross country or track, and she was saying that it was hard for her to do the same thing, and that she didn't have this set practice and a set routine every day, and she felt almost guilty if she didn't train, or even like the relationship with food and training, like there's this kind of input and output, like if I don't train I can't eat as much. And yoga, you obviously aren't going to burn as many calories as you do swimming or running, but you gain so many other things from it. So it's, I guess, this finding this balance and learning to separate it and like find joy in movement and something that you can do for yourself, and also for your mind too, because it is very physical, but you also get that mental component with it of kind of being able to relax afterwards, or just kind of escape and like step back and tune in with what's really going on. So it was definitely a new way to approach physical activity, and it became more than just like something physical. It became something that I could do to grow, which was not easy, but worth it.
Absolutely. Wow. Amazing. It's also so wonderful to kind of discover new elements of certain things when you try it out. You first think, oh, yoga, it's some stretching, it's some acrobatics movement maybe at some point. But then once you dive a little bit deeper, you're like, wow, it's this whole magical, amazing, big world out there.
Yeah.
And also, just like a personal anecdote, I've been injured from yoga at least 4 times.
Yeah. When I started, I was already had a shoulder injury, and then I hurt my back because I was trying to push too hard in a forward fold, and it was like, this is what you get for pushing too hard. Like, you should have listened.
It's literally what it is. It's your body telling you no. You need to slow down. Just trust. There's no rush. It's not a race.
Yeah. And if you don't listen when it's telling you no, it's going to speak very, very loudly. And when it does really tell you no, and then you're going to have to listen, and it's far worse. We always say there's like with stretching, and like a cue I often give in practice is like you want to find that sweet spot where like you feel sensation but not pain. You want to have like a good kind of movement. And of course, sometimes you want to feel a little bit of pain. Like, let's say Warrior 2 is never comfortable for anybody, especially when the instructor's like, we're going to hold this for 5 breaths. And you're like, my 5 breaths are very different from your 5 breaths.
For sure. But I'd say like, for me in the beginning, it was very hard to kind of understand why do I keep practicing, especially when I'm not seeing quick results. I'm not seeing progress maybe compared to other disciplines. What was the reason why you kept doing the practice, even though you weren't seeing the progress immediately?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I kept doing it. You know, when I first started doing it, it was like something I did with a friend, and I definitely did it as a way to, like, I guess balance out the workouts, but it was also like more of like something I needed to do rather than I wanted to do, especially with the Bikram, because you're sweating so much. So it was like, I need to go sweat. Like I was an undergrad, so it might have been like, oh, we were drinking one weekend. Okay, now I have to go sweat. So it was like definitely that like punishing relationship with it rather than finding enjoyment with it. And I think I knew I felt better after I did it. But once I did the teacher training, and I was surrounded by a group of, we were at least 20 women, and I was one of the younger ones. There were some of us who were around the same age. It was all from like 20 to 30 basically. And it was like such a good community, and that's when I really started to lean into it and realize like there's so much more to it. And I think I stuck with it because I did the teacher train, so like I had to do it, and it was like that challenge aspect of like, I started it, now I'm gonna finish it. And then afterwards I kept going, and it was like my yoga classes during the week were like my like sacred time, and I had to go. And over the years, it's evolved into much more to help with anxiety or to help with emotions and to just like feel good and to connect with the community. I really always loved the yoga community.
I echo that so strongly, and we're gonna get into all of those topics today, which is amazing.
Sneak preview.
That brings me nicely on. So I want to chat to you about your yoga teacher training.
Yeah,
this is something I'm considering doing. I'm very much looking forward to it. What was kind of your reason why you decided to do it? Because a lot of people are thinking of doing it, but what was actually the last stepping stone that actually pushed you to sign up and do it?
Well, first of all, I really hope you do a teacher training. You would be a wonderful yoga instructor. You can even just do it to like for yourself and to learn more about the practice. So I went to school in Connecticut, which has been in the Northeast in the U.S., and my parents were in Florida in like a beach town. So I'd go home and all my friends were in the Northeast and then I'd be home kind of, and it's hot in Florida. What else are you going to do? And so I needed something to do, and I often like lifeguarded in the summer. And that summer I don't even remember how I found the teacher training or what got me into it. I guess there was just something that like was drawing me to it, and I found the studio, and I don't know if I knew somebody that was already there. I don't remember. It was 2014, which is makes me feel so old.
You're not old. Not old at
all. But the woman running it, she offered to like let me do like a work study. So I got like a discount on the yoga teacher training. So it was kind of like I got to do a bit of like an internship and still do the teacher training. So it kind of gave me something to do for the summer. And I did a month-long intensive. So it was like all of June. And you can do different styles of teacher trainings. Like I did 200-hour teacher training. But there's also 500-hour, and you can build them, and sometimes you do them over like a course of weekends, or you do like a month-long intensive, or you can go on a retreat somewhere and do it. So there's tons of options. And I happened to get into that one, and I just decided, okay, that's what I was going to do. I think I convinced my parents to like help me pay for it as a birthday present because my birthday's in June, and did it.
That's amazing. What a wonderful way to spend some money. It's like an investment and a present and a gift.
Right.
At the same time, it's just, it's a wonderful, wonderful way for sure.
Yeah, it became so much more. They called me their hippie child for a little while. I think they regretted allowing me to do it for a moment because I definitely got into it a little bit too much, but not even too much. It's for whatever you want to go with it, but. Yeah,
I feel like that can happen to a lot of us yogis that take our practice to the next level. We become a bit more hippie, a bit more weird, more spiritual. I'm certainly kind of on that trajectory, which is fine.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is not to lose yourself, your authenticity in the process.
Yeah.
Because there can be so much pressure to fit in the box of what a yogi looks like.
Oh, 100%. And there's actually, there's a woman that I know from one of my studios in Florida who she went on to start her own thing called Bad Yogi. And I always loved her classes because she was very much like, you can eat meat and still come to my class. Like there's always this idea that yoga, you have to be this like perfect vegan and wear white if you go to yoga, or like you can't, I don't know, do other sports and do yoga. But yoga is literally for everybody and every body, which I think is really important as well to remember.
I want to frame this phrase.
Yeah, right?
Such a great phrase. I think I heard you say that in a yoga class.
Probably. Yeah. And that's, I think we might talk about how I started teaching.
Yeah, that's right.
But, so to get into that was one thing I didn't ever think I would teach. I remember even doing it and being like, because she gave, the part of the course was like, okay, what do you do if you teach? And how do you kind of establish your own business and this and that? And I was like, oh, this is just something I'm going to do. I'm going to do something else. And I'm still kind of navigating my way into like, if I want to be a full-time yoga instructor or not. So it's kind of hobby and work right now. But I didn't start teaching because I thought I had to be a certain way to teach. I thought I had to like look super fit and I had to like be practicing every day or be able to do all these crazy postures. And disclaimer, I really, really am not great at arm balances and inversions, like, right? And so I always thought, okay, I can't be a yoga instructor and not be able to do a handstand. And then I started teaching in Madrid. I taught English in Spain for 4 years, which another story. And I started doing it in the park with the expat community as a way to get involved. And I realized, like, again, like, I loved the community aspect of it and being able to bond with people. And I realized people take away the feeling that you give them more than, like, what postures you might have cued. And, like, if you can show up as your authentic self, like we're saying, right? And, like, people can connect with that, they're going to leave with so much more than just, I went and stretched for 45 minutes or I went and stretched for an hour. So I kind of got into it that way. And then here I've been teaching in London for the past 2 years. And again, like, I kind of accidentally walked into the YMCA, and it's like, I actually walked in to ask about the pool to go swim, and then walked out and was standing there. I was like, you should have asked them if they need a yoga instructor. And I was like, I'll just go back another time. And I was like, no, Claire, go and ask them now. And I walked back in, and sure enough, they needed a yoga instructor, and I started doing it, and I love it. So, and it's almost made me more confident too. Like, there's some days where I show up to the class and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to be here. I don't want to get up early. And then I immediately feel better when I walk into the yoga studio. It doesn't matter, like, if I feel tired or I feel like a little bloated that day or whatnot. Like, you always feel better by, like, helping other people. So that was a very long-winded answer to that question. Like, I got a lot of different subtopics in there.
Absolutely. But it's such a great story as well. I think it's so important for us to kind of find that service within us. I think it was Jay Shetty. He said the most happiness comes from service or something like that.
Yeah.
Even the Bhagavad Gita talks about selfless service and how just heartwarming it is. That also is, you know, a topic in itself, how that kind of clears your karma and all that kind of stuff. But it's really wonderful. I certainly feel that. And that's kind of why I started doing this podcast as well, as part of my service to the community, to humanity. It's really like finding your why as well. Like, you're there tired. You don't want to get up for it, but you know your why, and your why is to help people. It's to serve. It's beautiful.
Yeah. No, it's always, I did this during COVID when we were all in lockdown. Did an online course from Yale about the science of well-being from a psychology professor there. And one of the things she was saying that we, like, derive happiness from is from, like, acts of service. And I think that's, like, my love language too. It's like, I really love to help other people. It's probably my, like, personality type. So it makes a lot of sense. But it, like, you get that, like, external validation as well. So it's like, you get to do something for other people, but you also get benefit for yourself from it, which is really powerful.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, I totally resonate with that. That brings us on to, what advice would you have for a beginner yoga teacher or somebody that thinks about teaching?
Beginner yoga instructor. If you're thinking about doing yoga teacher training, go for it. If now you're at the point where, like, you're certified and you can teach, just go for it. And the first few times that you teach, even maybe, like, the first year you're teaching, like, even now, there's still moments where, like, I will doubt myself, or I wonder what I should say. And to, like, know, like, it's going to be a process when you start doing it, but don't, like, let that deter you from doing it. Like, go with the awkwardness of it. And one thing I will say, having been a teacher in a classroom and in a yoga studio, is unless you tell people you've made a mistake, or unless you tell people, like, not even a mistake, right? Like, you've gone off of what you've scripted or planned, unless you tell them, they're not going to know. So, like, there's some days where, like, I get in and, like, I've totally missed a posture on one side versus the other. And sometimes people don't even recognize it until I say it. And there's always another really important thing that someone taught me in yoga teacher training. There's always the class you plan, there's a class you teach, and the class you walk away with. And they can't all be the same. And so don't hold on to so much, like, if you've planned it and I'm going to do this, this, and this, but then you get in and you see the students are maybe tired and maybe you should kind of change it. Like, be willing to kind of go with the flow. Yoga is a flow, right? And don't hold on to so much, like, if you've missed it or you haven't done exactly what you plan to do. Because I think it's really an art to be able to kind of move with the moment. as well.
I think it's also like about letting go of perfection, like an expectation.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to also ask, like sometimes what I've started also doing is asking students, like, how did you find the flow? Or how is my pacing or my voice? And so I always kind of ask, like I'll ask, like if it's a trusted student, like you, or because something you're comfortable with to give you feedback, because not everyone will give you honest feedback. And I also just scan the room, like use the cues, right? Like if people keep showing up for class, that's a really good sign. And I always use my like cue is if I can make people laugh, or at least someone in the room laugh at some point in the class, like I know I've done something right, or I've got someone engaged. So, and don't be afraid to push people either. That is something too. Sometimes I'm nervous about doing hard poses but people want to be challenged. So, and teach what you know. Like if you're not comfortable, I can't do a side crow. So that won't really appear in my classes right now. But also like you could do it and just say, okay, I'm not practicing this posture right now. If you're practicing it, like now's your time to do it. So, and take other yoga classes from other instructors. That's how I've learned a lot too, is just by doing. And then I'm like, okay, I really love the way they did this. I can play on that.
That's so true, because like every instructor has a different style, and I'm looking forward to learning what my style is going to be like when I'm going to be a qualified yoga teacher. But
and your style can change too, based on like how you, like what point you are at in your life as well, or what like let it be a reflection of you too.
Wow, so wise.
Right? I gotta remember this for myself.
Oh, amazing. I suggest we jump into the mental health aspect of yoga and how to be more present. How can a regular practice of yoga help us stay more present and be more connected in this ever more confusing world?
Right, especially with all the digital media and social media and everything going on. I think yoga itself can be really great for finding a sense of grounding, and it can help you be present, which can be both like a really great thing and a really awful thing at the same time. Because sometimes when you become more present, you tune in a little bit more and you get to know yourself more. You might realize like, maybe that's not so great, but that's really valuable as well. So I think there's so many different styles of yoga. So I think it's really important to find the one that you connect with, and to see what like you need to get out of it. So like for me, I really love vinyasa, because vinyasa is more fast paced, it's more athletic, it's never the same thing, you can be more creative. And that helps me to get out of my head and like into my body a little bit more and kind of disconnect. But there's also some times where like recently in life, I've been having like a lot of transitions going on, which we're going to get into. And I've started going to more of like yin classes, which I never used to do, because yin, you hold the postures. You might do like 6 postures for the entire hour. And I used to think, this is so boring, I can't sit here, I'm too impatient. But recently it's helped me find like some sense of calm and like ease and like kind of tune in a little bit. So I think tuning in, using the yoga practice and like and finding the one that works for you and resonates with whatever you need in life can really help you tune into like what's going on and maybe what you need to work through, if that makes sense. I don't know if you find anything with your yoga practice that kind of helps you stay present.
Totally, because in some yoga practices that are more intense, I can't be present because I'm just annoyed, or the posture is too hard for me.
Yeah.
So I think it's really about finding this sweet spot and then kind of translating this sweet spot into real life. Because if it's a very good yoga class that you enjoyed, you just feel so high afterwards. You're like, I love life, you know?
Right? Yeah.
I feel so relaxed. My body feels so good. I'm so connected. There is, mind and body connection that was newly established in this yoga class. So I really feel like it's about listening to your body and kind of acting this out in the classroom. And because when we hold the posture, it really helps us kind of remember, okay, this is my body in the now. I'm holding this posture in the now. And now I also need to connect my body with my breath. So you're kind of using all those tools at the same time to be literally in the present moment, because as soon as you switch your brain into paying attention to your breath, you are immediately in the present.
Yeah. Yes. That's said a couple of really awesome things there. Like one, when you get into a posture and you're like, oh, this posture hurts today, or I can't do this. That's so valuable right there. And something that I learned with my yoga practice is like, what is my self-talk going on with this posture? And like, that's where like the yummy work is, and like being present, like with how you talk to yourself when you're in a posture, and like, especially when it's a challenging posture and you have to hold it. So that's, I think, really present to tune into what's going on in the mind, and then using like the breath, like you said. So the breath is like your like foundational piece of yoga. If all you sit and do is breathe, you've technically done yoga. And we try to match in yoga the breath to the movement. And so once you can tune into that breath and use that to like help get out of the body a little bit, you realize, okay, maybe this posture isn't so bad and I can hold it and go into it. And at some point, maybe your yoga practice, like especially when you're doing that like challenging asana and the flow and moving, like just tuning out is like so important. It's just like burning through whatever narrative we're telling ourselves. And then you get to the end of it and you're like, oh wow, that wasn't so bad. Or, oh wow, this actually is what like I need to focus on. Or like, I am actually still stressed about this. Maybe I need to address it. I always kind of, something recently I've been trying to do in the past years, this rule with myself of like, because I will get really reactive to situations and or like want to solve things right away. And so sometimes I'm like, okay, Claire, maybe we just need to take a nap or go to sleep or go do yoga or go for a run or exercise. And sometimes if I do that, it doesn't bother me anymore. And then I realize, okay, we were just like tired or we needed to move. And then sometimes it's like, okay, if it still bothers me, now I need to do something about it. So I think that that's also really helpful as a way to like be present and like know and navigate those tough situations in life. I feel like that's a lot of different things, navigating the emotions, navigating mental health, especially with like, it's so easy like with social media and digital media to like spend hours on the phone, and then you get into it and maybe you see friends were doing something and you weren't invited, or all of a sudden the comparison starts where this person's doing that, or you think this and that. And so your mind's just constantly going, and using the practice to step away from that can be so valuable.
You know what I also love when I go to yoga class? It is an hour I know I will spend without my phone.
Yeah.
And it is so precious to me. And that's why I think I feel so good, because that really helps me to enter this flow state.
Yeah, it's like something you do. It's like your me time, like something you do for yourself.
Absolutely. And it's just concentration on the practice without distractions on the phone. Because even if I meditate in my room, I still use my phone. So it's for me, I really hate the fact that how the last thing I see before I go into my meditation is my screen.
Yeah.
And the first thing I'll see after my meditation, when I switch off whatever, the meditation background music, is my phone.
That's so true. I never thought about that. Yeah. And I guess, now too, that brings a really good point. I practice a lot at home, and a lot of times I just do my own thing, but a lot of times I use an online platform. And you're still, I guess, looking at a screen, but when you go to a yoga studio, you really can disconnect. You have that energy around you. So
The energy
different.
piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, the energy piece is so important as well. Because you feel it around the practitioners in the room and from the teacher as well.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%. I can tell sometimes if the room has got really tense energy, I'm just like, okay, we need a long child's pose today.
And that is kind of like what you were saying earlier, how you can adjust the class that you've planned based on the situation, based on the energy, based on how people are feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something that I've learned to pay attention to with time, or like, especially in the early morning when people are tired, I'm like, okay, lay down on your backs, or if people need energy, I'm like, okay, we're going to start this way.
That's definitely how I like to start the yoga class. Lying down or child's pose or something like this. We've touched on kind of people in the yoga class. And I want to chat to you more about how do you make meaningful connections from the people that you meet through yoga, and how do you seek those people who are like-minded?
Yeah, so I think that that's like a really important thing. And like we were talking about, like getting off of the screen and being present, right? Like you're connecting with things on a screen, but then you go into a yoga studio and you're able to connect in real life with people, which is like so much, for my opinion, it's just so much more meaningful. And so I think when you're in a yoga practice and then yoga studio, you have all these people that you all have a shared interest and you're going to yoga practice for whatever reason you're there. And it's maybe like the person next to you on the mat. Like, you know, I feel like sometimes in yoga studios, especially in London, I found it, people are kind of there and they're doing their own thing and they're like, well, they want to get in, they want to get out, and no one really wants to talk to each other. But the minute someone does talk to each other, the minute I ask, like, how are you doing? Does anyone have any plans for the weekend? Everyone wants to talk. So I feel like once you start to like kind of get that going, everyone like loosens up. You might find that there's somebody else that maybe is going through something similar in life as you, or you find like your yoga buddy and you can go to the class every day. Maybe it turns into like, okay, we're going to get coffee afterwards. And it's really great because then you find people that you can connect with based on that yoga practice. Because like we were saying earlier, when you start going down the rabbit hole of Ayurveda and the Bhagavad Gita and all the different asanas and everything, sometimes people look at you like you've got 6 heads. But so finding those people that you can talk to about it, you're like, yes, I had a really awesome crow pose today. And you're like, really want to talk about it. It's great.
I also find that with yogis, it's very easy to connect over this, because when I look at a yogi who is into the same things as I am, it's like instant connection. It's like, yes, finally I found you amongst the people in London. And it's I think you're so right though. It's like it's a very London and big city vibe. Like even when we're walking in the street, like people are not smiling, they're not talking, which is normal, you know, we've got our own thing. But yeah, people are very much, you know, just in and out, just there to do yoga class. And then once you actually start chatting, then you build up those meaningful connections. It's more of a community feel, which can also help some people retain their yoga practice. Because
I mean, that's like, I feel like sometimes like with all like the group classes at gyms and stuff, like we both were at Virgin Active practicing. And I feel like people have their classes because it's also a way to be social and get out and be with people. And we need that as human beings. Like, I think we crave that interaction. And there's so much in society, and I'm guilty of this, of like this independence and need to be able to do everything on your own and not asking for help is a sign of weakness. But we actually need that community. And I think a yoga community is even like more valuable because you already have people that have a shared interest, something in common, and you can really like lean on that. It's like there's already like this like shared trust almost.
Absolutely, yeah. We are a social creature.
Yeah,
you cannot take this away. And also, I think the number one factor that influences your health is community.
Yeah, they've done like so many studies on longevity and happiness, and with I think the largest tenet is our social interactions and our communities. So I think that that's something that is missing, and that maybe we feel when we're in a yoga studio is a sense of belonging and sense of community feel, and almost belonging to something greater. And when you kind of, that almost helps the feeling of you feel good about yourself. It goes, like, I guess that's part of like what goes beyond that physical practice and what you gain from it.
Absolutely. You know what kind of sparked into my mind? I went to some yoga retreats early in the year, and that was just so amazing because you practice with the same people in an amazing location, maybe somewhere tropical. And there's just so much more to it than just a practice and just some random people doing a workout together.
Yeah.
It's really, you chat about the teachers, how the sequence went, what are the, implications beyond the physical practice. And you're just there from like each part of the world, but there is something uniting all of you. It's this beautiful practice. Yeah. And it's just so wonderful. And you don't use the phone as much, and you talk and you learn so much from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just really remember those
That's
amazing
awesome.
times. We should really somehow, I think, implement this more in the yoga studios.
Yeah, you almost realize like you don't even really like feel a need to be on your phone, right? Like it's like you become more present in the moment, and you want to be in that moment rather than being in some alternative world, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah.
I would love if there's a social or something like that after a yoga class.
Right?
I'd be there every time.
I know those yoga classes really do like yoga and wine or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that is one of the nice things about having a studio versus a gym space for yoga. The gyms aren't always the same. So it's like finding your tribe, your community. And I think even too, I think one of the problems with that, especially in London, is just like going to a studio. Sometimes like I can't afford it, like living here. So that's one thing I don't love about yoga. And I guess, so, and on that hand, like if you can find an online community, it's still, even though it's online, it's still as valuable as if you got yourself to a studio, because you're still going to get something from it. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's also very sad that it's not accessible to everybody. I have seen some free yoga classes in London, but I don't think it's advertised as much. Or I feel like people feel a lot of intimidation when it comes to yoga. I just know because I tried to drag a couple of friends. To yoga class. You know who you are, friends. And yeah, there's so much intimidation, like the stretching aspect. I need to be flexible. It's expensive. I need a membership somewhere.
Or you have to stick to it and you're committed. I don't have the time for this.
Exactly. So I do agree that having an online teacher is very valuable. And you can also do practices that are only 20 minutes long, 10 minutes long. There's so much flexibility. So whatever works for you, it's, some people, some yogis practice in the cave. They're alone.
Yeah.
You can treat your room as a cave and just a cave with a screen and you do your yoga class. It really depends.
Yeah, there's something for everybody with it. Yeah, again, even if you just do 10, 15, 20 minutes, that's a really good way to kind of start testing the waters out and break into the practice and make it a little bit more accessible as well.
Absolutely. And that's how I started as well. I actually started online during COVID. And I was doing those 20 minutes practices and damn, some of them were hard. I did not know yoga is supposed to be hard. I thought it was just like passive, stretching, supposed to be good for your body, feels nice, but damn.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Especially some instructors when we're like, okay, we only have 20 minutes. I got to cram everything in. Oh my God. It almost is like an invitation to make it harder.
Yeah, so take it with a pinch of salt if there's a short yoga video online.
Yeah.
All right. Sure. I suggest then we go into the topic of transitions.
Yes.
We chatted about this earlier. All of us have big changes in life at some point, and I think navigating those changes can be very challenging for some people. I guess my question to you is, from a yoga perspective, how does yoga help us navigate those very big changes that seem overwhelming and almost, insurmountable?
Yeah, like you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, so this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart right now because I have a lot of big changes in my life happening. And if you had asked me this question even like a few months ago, I feel like I would have been in that like tunnel of like, oh my God, this is overwhelming. I don't know what I'm doing. I just don't even know where to start. And so something that really shifted my perspective on it and has helped me is I wound up I subscribed to Glow, which is an online platform, and there's just one instructor that I love, and I always do her classes. And I randomly chose to do one that was like about kind of like transitions and like new beginnings and things. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it. And she made it so playful, and it was all about like moving within the postures and like getting into postures in different ways. And like what comes up with it. And I found myself like almost laughing at myself, like being able to get like move into like a revolved half moon, like, and like, oh, so all of a sudden you got to go do this. And it was like, crap, like what am I supposed to do now? Like it kept you on your toes, and I fell, or like I found myself like almost like laughing with the process. And so I think with yoga and transitions, when you're going through a transition, it just seems like there's always something, like you can't ever like win. And it's like, okay, I did this one thing, now there's this next thing. And it's like, when is it going to end? Like, I want to get off this roller coaster. And I think we're always so focused on like getting off of the roller coaster or getting to the end. And sometimes maybe we don't know what that end is. And that can be really scary. Like right now, I don't know what my like next step is necessarily going to be. but I've realized like that's also really exciting because it's a space for us to like find, I guess, reinvent ourselves a little bit. And I think paying attention to what's going on in that space of transition and like what I was saying before, like how you talk to yourself in the postures can be far more interesting. And then when we actually get to that space. So I think for another analogy is like training. Like if you're going to go train for a half marathon or a marathon, your goal is that race. But then you get to the race and it's done. It's everything, all the work that happens to get there and to get you through that transition or whatever goal you're getting to. That's where you're growing and that's where you're learning and taking away so much more from it. And it can be really hard to lean into that because sometimes we realize things about ourselves that we don't want to realize or we might not like. But being able to like acknowledge that and say, okay, I can accept this, or maybe this is something I need to change or grow in it is, I think, so much more interesting. And it makes those transitions so much more powerful. And then I think we can come out of the transitions as more and stronger people that can stand in our power. I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like I'm kind of going around in circles.
No, it does make sense. And it's very, very powerful. I feel like it's so scary to lean in.
Yeah.
Because we're so scared, as you were saying, of, our emotions, something that we don't consider perfect about ourselves. And we're being kind of taught from birth to push out all of those things rather than leaning into it and embracing it. But the moment we push out, like pushing out is not dealing with things. If you push out, you're not growing necessarily. You're just distracting yourself and moving on to other things.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like, as you were saying, like growing is coming from those challenging situations where you lean in, you embrace.
Yeah.
Okay, and what can I learn from this? But you forget that you learn from the process as well as the result. I feel like a lot of us are focused on the end result and like, okay, this is the end result, but we need to slow down and okay, this is the process. I'm going to come out of it a stronger person. There's some learning from the process as well. Why do I need to rush to get to the result?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. Why do I need to rush to get to the result? Because then you get there and it's like, oh, well, what next sometimes? And I think also on the flip side of that is that like what next may also even deter us from getting into like going through the transitions. I listened to this podcast one time and it was almost talking about how sometimes we have a fear of success because then if you succeed and you do something, well, what does that mean? Sometimes it's far easier to stay in this space where maybe you have these unhealthy habits or you don't want to grow, i.e. you don't want to transition, because that's more comfortable, like you know it. And then when you actually start to say to yourself, okay, like I'm going to take these next steps and maybe I don't know, or maybe I'm going to, this is my goal. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to get there. You just actually, that's when you start to grow and learn. And then maybe you get there and then if you're present and all along with it, you can get there and you can be more mindful about, okay, what can I actually do? And you actually realize your full potential. This is for disclaimer. This is what I'm trying to do as well. I'm saying all this. I'm trying to implement this in my life as well.
It's amazing. And I think the first step is to acknowledge that you can implement this because we never pause and think. We're always, part of this machine. Our minds are constantly thinking. And also our minds hate change. That's why we love comfort zone. And it makes sense because our minds can interpret change as danger.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's almost like you resist it and it's like you're protecting yourself and you think, okay, or like you have this like, I need to be ready for this and that. And it's, I think there is a certain point where like you need to be ready for things, but I also think we're never fully ready for everything. I mean, like, right? Like you're never going to be fully ready to go to grad school, maybe get into a relationship. It's like you wait for like to teach. It's like you wait for have all these perfect conditions and you make your success conditional and all these other things. And it's like, well, why am I actually waiting for it? Why don't I actually just go do it and get it now and figure it out? And all the other things you might find, or at least what I'm finding is the minute I said, you know what, actually, this is what I want to go do, and this is what I need. I don't know how I'm going to do it. This might not be the perfect moment, but it needs to happen. It almost feels like all the things that I thought needed to happen for me to do the other thing are now falling into place because I've just taken that first step of doing it.
Wow.
Which is really strange. And you're like, oh, okay, well, why did I wait so long to do this? Right?
There's so much there. And it's funny how this is, I guess, more of a spiritual take. Like, once you really wanted to do something for a long time, once you feel it in your heart and soul, and then you start acting out, it's like the conditions are starting to become a little bit more perfect, and conditions are laying out such that it's easier for you to do the thing. Like, for example, me with my podcast, like that's why I decided to do it now. I kept waiting until the perfect moment. I was like, this is going to be when I'll be at a point in my career, I don't know, XYZ. This is when I will look a certain way. This is when I'll be speaking a certain way. This is when I'll be in a certain location. It's like, you know what? I'm just going to wait all my life at this point. However imperfect it is, I'm just going to do it. And I'll just learn as I go. And you learn from doing. Yes, thinking is important and planning. But the biggest growth and change, as we were saying, is going through that transition of doing and leaning into it.
Yeah, because no matter how hard you plan, right, there's always a class you plan, and then there's always a class that actually happens, right? Yeah. And I think it's so brave that you've started the podcast and that you've had the courage to just say that I want to do this. Because, like, that's also something I realized with teaching. It's like, I see all these the other instructors, and I'm like, I'm just as good as them. Or maybe there's other people that want to do podcasts, and the only difference is you're actually doing it, and they're not. And, like, that's what separates it. It's like having that strength and that courage to go and do it versus not doing it. It's like, well, why can't I have that too?
Everybody can. That's the thing. Yeah. What would your life be like if you didn't have fear? That's the thought.
Right?
What would it be like?
Fear is can be a very good thing, right? Like, you want to have a little bit of fear, but I also think, like, it also can be a good indication of, like, that you are doing something that's worth it. Like, if you had no fear of doing it, maybe it wouldn't be as worth it. And I guess, why do people go and jump out of airplanes, right? Like, you get a thrill from it. So if like, you have a little bit of fear, you're a little bit unsure about it, then follow that, like, which can be really hard to do. But if you're present, I think that's why the whole idea of being present is so valuable, because I think when you're vibrating at a higher level where you are present, you really can move with that more, rather than just kind of living passively. You can live a little bit more actively and present. Present.
For sure.
For lack of a better word. What's another word to say present?
In the moment?
In the moment, yeah. Like, consciously.
Wow. Yeah, that's very true. I completely agree.
I think the other thing, too, which I also tried doing yoga class, is you don't have to be perfect all the time. And, like, it's okay in those moments to feel sad or to feel fearful. Like, I think we often get to our yoga class and there's almost this, like, happiness and positivity mindset, which is really great, but it also puts a lot of pressure on yourself to, like, you always have to feel positive and, like, you're not allowed to have a bad day. But you can. Like, if you show up to the yoga mat and you tune in and you're like, I am sad today, let yourself feel it, be present in it, and then, like, move through it. Like, I think it's that, like, don't attach to it, but, like, allow yourself to feel that there isn't, and, like, you're going through it, you're human. And that is, like, the process of being human. Like, we're afraid to feel things and go through those transitions, but if you're feeling it, that's great. Like, we're living, you're doing it.
And also, emotions come and go.
Yeah.
They're gonna, go away. And one trick that I learned, because I struggle with anxiety, is to disassociate yourself. Like you were saying, not attaching yourself to the emotion. And for example, saying, not that I'm anxious, but I am experiencing anxiety. And that kind of attaches the impermanence to the emotion.
Yeah, like, you are not the emotion. The emotion's not you either.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We touched on resistance a bit earlier. I just wanted to chat to you about the process of letting go and letting go of resistance. Another thought that came into my mind is, what would life be like if we didn't have resistance? Like, imagine just doing everything without resistance.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that save a lot of energy for you from your day? Just how much more positive would you feel? How much less, negative emotion would accumulate in your body if, like, everything you do is like, oh, I don't want to do it, but I do it.
Yeah.
But you can approach things in such a different way. Okay, this is a situation, I can accept it. I can do it. Or if I don't like the situation, I can change it. But in the moment, what will the resistance add?
Yeah. I think the resistance, that process of growing and like being able to overcome it. I mean, like when you have to do work or have to do tasks, you're like, oh God, I don't want to do this, and you procrastinate, and then you learn all these little tricks of, okay, I'm only going to do this for an hour and then I'm done. It's like you kind of overcome this, or there's a reward at the end. So I think being able to overcome the resistance is important, but having it too is, I guess, part of like the work that we have to do in the transitions. Is resistance a bad thing that I need to let go of? Or is resistance a good thing that's telling me, no, this isn't the right path, and redirecting me to something else? Because sometimes it's like, I've known where there's been moments in my life, especially over the past year, it's like, I've thought I wanted one thing, and I've gone for it and convinced myself this is what I need to do. And it feels like life is just like, Claire, let me tell you something. That's not what you're supposed to do. And it's like, why? I've done everything right. Like, what can I do? And it's just, sometimes that redirection can be a really valuable thing. So sometimes that resistance can help put you on the path. So again, leaning into it and not fighting against it, but allowing it to help you. But then also, like, if now I've got resistance, okay, I've been redirected onto this new path, but now there's a little resistance to like change and to let go, because it's hard to let go, but that's the resistance that you need to like get over the hurdle and let go of. So maybe there's like different types of resistance or different ways of, I guess, thinking about it.
That is so true. You're totally right, because I was kind of approaching resistance. Like I was almost attaching like a bad connotation towards resistance, but it doesn't mean that it's bad. Yeah.
I think there can be maybe different types of resistance.
And also on that thing where life redirects you, God has a plan.
Right? The universe has got some kind of plan out there.
Yep, totally. And I bet every single person, when they look at a challenging situation they had in the past, they're like, oh yeah, I needed the situation for XYZ now.
Right? Everyone's always like, oh, it happens for a reason, or all work out for the end, or all make sense one day. And sometimes it's like, oh, I want it to make sense right now. And it's trusting that process and being present in it, so then you can be more mindful of what's going on and where maybe you need those redirections to help.
Totally.
Right. There's so much. And if this doesn't happen in a day, trust me.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to have patience.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and there's some days where I'm just like, this sucks. This is so dumb. And so it's not always rainbows and butterflies.
For sure. And that's the thing, like if we only just had rainbows and butterflies, wouldn't be able to appreciate it, maybe.
Yeah, that yin to the yang kind of thing.
Totally.
Balance.
Speaking of letting go, I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned to me earlier that you have had a plant medicine experience. Specifically, you have had an ayahuasca ceremony. And ayahuasca is kind of known to kind of help you to let go of things and to really confront certain challenging aspects of your life, of your personality. And it kind of shows you what I guess you need to see in the moment. How was ayahuasca helpful on your journey, and how did it help you to let go of things?
Yeah. Okay, so actually talking about resistance and now this is a really good example. So I went to see a holistic doctor, and she recommended the ayahuasca ceremony to me, or suggested she was going to one. I was like, you should come, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh no, I don't have time for that, or that's too much for me, or too out there. And I just was like resisting it, and just making up all these excuses of why I shouldn't go. And then finally it was like, there was still a spot open at the ceremony. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to, and I just literally decided, you know what? I'm just going to go. Like, why not? And I was nervous. I was like really nervous to go. And even on the morning of, I was like, can I say I got COVID or something? So I don't have to go. And I nearly missed my train to get to where the ceremony was. And I was like, okay, maybe if I miss my train, then it's the universe telling me I don't have to go. Then I made it, and I got there, and everyone was so welcoming, so non-judgmental. And you could have come from, like, you could have been the most hippie person ever or the most posh person ever, and it didn't matter. Like, you were you and human. And it was just like such a nice welcoming environment. And the ceremony itself was intense, but it was so powerful and showing me like where I was still holding on to things. I think we often think, I've checked my boxes, I've done yoga class, I'm eating healthy, I'm taking care of myself, this, and that. And we think we've got it all covered, but maybe like the reason why things aren't working is because maybe there's something else we need to let go of, or maybe there's something else we need to like move towards. So for me, the ceremony showed me of like, I would need to let go of things. And that was really powerful because I was still holding on to it. And it made me really see it and confront it and release the emotion and release the hurt and the pain and just cry. And which sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to like feel the emotions like we've talked about. And once I kind of released that, it was like the whole heart space felt better, which is a very powerful thing to happen in a single ceremony. But now afterwards, it's like doing that work, but I can feel the shifts in how that's happened. So I think when we let go and we think about, rather than thinking about what we're giving up, we think about what we're gaining, that can be so just shift it and be so powerful, for lack of a better way of saying powerful.
Absolutely.
So that's how I used it. And of course, plant medicine doesn't have to be for everyone, and there are tons of different things you can do. Will I do it again? To be determined. But it was definitely worth it in the moment. And not even in the moment, it's been worth it now.
What would you say to people who are considering it if they're not sure?
I think you have to do what's right, what feels right for you with it. Like if you feel a pull to go to it, do it. And with that one, I would say there is a little bit of a need to maybe feel a little bit ready for it. So don't try to force it with yourself, because you have to be open to whatever comes up. For me, like what came up, I necessarily didn't like what came up. It was, you might realize some things, but it's also, if you're open to it, it can be really powerful to show you maybe where you need to let go of, or where you can redirect in your life. And just that process of letting go, it's painful, right? Because you have to let go of these things that protect you, or whatever, these past ideas, but it's also really freeing, and it just feels like this weight has been lifted off of me. And it's just like, wow, now I can actually feel like I can like go after what I want. It's like whatever is weighing you down and holding you back is removed somewhat. And I feel like for me, it was like holding on to things that I thought, like holding on to hurt from past things to protect myself from being hurt again. But it's like, then you're carrying all of that into all of your other experiences, rather than being able to be open to new experiences and maybe a new version of yourself as well. Which maybe you've outgrown that past version, or what you thought your life should look like. And like this idea of what I should be like, if you hold on to that, you can't actually be who you are. And that's so sad. Like, why wouldn't you want to be who you are? Like, we all have so much to offer. So like, let your light shine.
That's so true, because if you want something new to happen in your life, you need to make space for it. And if all your space is occupied with things from the past, then how is that new thing going to come into your life? There's no space. And the other really powerful thing that you said is, being our true selves. And because our true selves are, we're set down underneath all of these things that the ego had created around us.
Ego.
And that includes things like hurt, things like stories about myself, past experiences, memories, fake perceptions, things from the childhood, traumas, etc. And once you start unraveling it, your true self comes out, and it's, why wouldn't you be a true self? You're given this wonderful opportunity in this world to express, to create, and you being you're doing a disservice to the world if you're not you, because you're uniquely created to offer a gift to the world that is only unique to you. There's no other you. If you're not doing this, this is a disservice automatically to the world, because you're not tapping in your truest essence and your truest potential. Imagine how much you could give if you just unraveled all of that.
Yeah, I love that, right? I mean, the world needs that, and you need that. Like, allow that to happen.
There's a very good TED Talk by Chris Williamson, another podcaster. I think it's called "Embrace Your Weirdness."
Oh, I love that. Right?
Yeah.
I know. Don't let it not show. That's why I always loved teaching, because it was like a safe space to be myself. But and it's like taking that outside of it and now like letting it shine in every aspect of your life, which is really hard. But yeah, and I guess that's where like the yoga practice can maybe come in, is helping you know yourself a little bit more, or burning through the story and all of that. So when you're trying to let go of it, you can use that to complement the other work that you might be doing. Like if you've done a plant medicine, or you've done some other sort of ceremony or retreat, they all kind of complement each other. And there's no right or wrong path on a healing journey. I don't know if there's something that you've found that has really helped you, that's so like on your journey.
Yeah, for me, it was a number of things. Therapy, but that's more, I guess, like a traditional Western medicine type thing. Nothing against therapy. Other things like spirituality, meditation, yoga. And you were totally right. Like everything had brought their unique taste into my life, and they all complement each other. And now they make up a story about how, I started healing myself. It's not just one thing. And it might be, it might not be. There's no right or wrong, as you were saying, and different things work for different people. For some people, it's astrology. For some people, it's, I don't know, dancing, ecstatic dance. Doesn't have to be spiritual at all. For some people, it's therapy. For some people, it's boxing. It can be whatever. There's no right or wrong.
It's like finding the thing that works for you.
Absolutely, yeah. And also, like, I think it's very important to emphasize, like, never stop searching. Like, the world has so much to offer. And there's really, like, so many things. It can be almost overwhelming, but it's so nice to be able to experience different things if you have the opportunity to. Especially, I feel like here in London, in the Western world. Yeah. There's everything combined in one place. There's a lot of, good offers in terms of accessibility. Even though things might be expensive, there might be an intro offer and things like that. And it's like, it's just such a blessing to have all of those things. Now the conversation about mental health is booming. Yeah. So there's more, free meditations. There's more resources. People are more open to chatting about this like we're doing now. I really am hopeful about the future of this planet. And I really hope that this collective healing that had started will really see some real influence from that.
Yeah, I hope so too. I think the more we get into it and the more you're doing it, as well as where you're going to meet people that are on that same journey or want to be on that same journey as well. And you're more open to all these different possibilities.
For sure. Yeah. I think this might be a good note for us to end this one.
Yeah.
Unless you have anything else you wanted to
No,
add.
I think positivity for the future of the world is a very good way to end it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Claire. It was amazing. So insightful. I loved it. Yeah. So much to unpack. I really hope this conversation will travel to all parts of the world.
Yeah, I hope so. And I hope, the things can change and your mindset can change, and it's important just to kind of be open to it and talk about it, right? We're all learning. I'm talking about all of this, but it's stuff that I still have to be reminded of to myself. So one day I'm going to go back and watch this podcast and be like, she was really smart. Listen to her.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
It was lovely.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.